15.
I like suffering.
Okay, reader.
The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem.
G'day, welcome back to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. We love games, you love games, we love each other. I'm Brendo.
I'm Jem.
Jem. We are the Gaming Lovers.
I cut you off there.
Yeah, well, I did take the wheel a little bit on that intro, but it's cool, it's okay.
Ugh, this has just been a crazy week. So let's jump straight into it. We are going to be talking about our guilty pleasures in gaming, or the flops that we love that we don't really want to admit that we really enjoy playing, things that maybe didn't do so well critically or sell very well.
We
but...
don't want to admit that we're going to broadcast it on a global scale.
Yes, we are very hypocritical that way.
Some would find that embarrassing. Hey, I've got a story that's a little bit embarrassing. Would you like to hear it?
Always.
Okay, by trade, I'm a train driver. Let me rewind.
Yeah, that's super embarrassing.
Hey, well, that's just harsh.
Okay, keep going.
Let me rewind the clock. From my memory, about 6 weeks ago, I was doing repetitive, boring, same old 3 stops this way, 3 stops that way, 3 stops this way, 3 stops that way.
Sounds like a dance.
It sounded like a kid's song from Play School.
3 stops this way, 3 stops that way, do a little toot. Toot,
Boop. We'll do a little toot. Not in the booth, please. There's limited oxygen in here as it is. Anyway.
Don't worry, I'm not Leroy Brown.
Month and a bit ago, I was driving trains. I was bored out of my brain. And then a lovely young lady boarded the train wearing a Foxhound t-shirt from Metal Gear Solid. So, because I needed entertainment, I decided to strike up a conversation with a stranger and said, "Hey, I like your t-shirt." Smooth as always. And she said, "So you're a fan of the series?" And I said, "Yes, indeed." And that was the extent of our conversation. However, when we reached our destination, I decided to entertain myself a little further and decided to do a PA announcement in a certain Metal Gear Solid voice. So I grabbed the PA mic and go, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're now arriving at our destination. Hope you have a wonderful evening. Please make sure you have all of your belongings as you exit the train."
Pretty tasty.
Pretty tasty. So I do that, open the doors, deactivate the train cab, look out the window with excitement, waiting for the acknowledgement, and there was none.
Nothing.
No eye contact, nothing. So I'm
Crickets.
like, well, maybe she didn't realise I was doing a snake voice.
Maybe she just thought you had a sore throat.
Maybe. You fast forward to about 3 days ago, and a fellow train driver knocks on my window as I'm waiting to depart and goes, "I meant to ask you, did you do a snake voice on the PA?" And because it was like a stupid o'clock in the morning, I'm not used to doing an early shift, I thought he meant like a snake voice.
Like
Like
Jafar?
an animal. Yeah,
when
like-
Jafar turns into the big snake.
So he says,
"How snake-like I can be."
he says to me, "Did you do a snake voice?" And I'm like, what on earth are you even talking about? And then mid-sentence, I'm like, oh, I did a snake voice. I did solid snake voice. And I said, "Oh, yeah. Do you mean out of a video game?" And he's like, "Yeah, that was my daughter."
What a small world.
I'm like, oh my goodness. So I do one goofy thing at work,
One.
one reported goofy thing at work that I think, no one will hear about this. This will just be a bit of fun. And of course, it happens to be another train driver's daughter. And he looked up the shift, found out it was me, found a photo of me on Facebook and said to her, "Was this the guy?" And she's like, "Yeah, that was him." So I'm like, oh great, now she actually can identify me too.
Just in case it needs to be in a police report.
So there you go. That's what happened to me this week. How were you publicly embarrassed, Jem?
My job can be always embarrassing, just with weird scripts and things that come my way. I was trying to think, when you're talking about like how video games sometimes can be linked with your job. Obviously, when you see passengers cosplaying and stuff at conventions and things like that, that's often quite fun.
It's always fun when I don't realise there's a convention on that weekend and suddenly Cloud Strife is walking through Flinders Street. And I'm like, is he just dressing up for fun? Or is there something going... Oh, no, there's Professor Layton. Never mind.
I've done like plenty of auditions for different video games and things, a lot of mobile games and stuff like that, and some stuff like radio ads and that too. I remember one of my favorite radio ads that I felt like I didn't actually have to do any acting for was about a girl that was addicted to Pokemon Go.
The role you were born to
And it
play
came
at the
across
time.
my desk and I'm like, oh, well, they found the right girl for this. So that was a lot of fun to do.
What is the most embarrassing voice job you've had to do?
Oh, don't make me say it.
Come on.
No.
Didn't you have to voice like a French cow or something at some point?
French cow?
Didn't you do that? It was just like, oh, merci, moo.
No, it was close. I had to... I can't believe you're making me say this. I voiced various farm animals, not just a cow, but I had to do their laughs. And no, I'm not going to demonstrate it for you now.
The glamorous life of a voiceover artist. I did laughing animals.
It was one of those weird days, and I had to really sugar myself up to kind of be silly enough to do that job. But yeah, most work that I do a lot of commercial voiceover. So it's very rare that I have silly stuff come in.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It is fun when I get to put on the actor's hat as opposed to just
Reading the
smooth
terms and
voice.
conditions of a bank loan.
I do a lot of e-learning modules and things like that, a lot of technical jargon. So it's refreshing to do fun stuff or to play other characters and do other voices. So as embarrassing as it was still fun. It still makes me blush thinking about it. Okay, moving on.
Well, save your embarrassment for later. There's still plenty of it to go around as we start confessing the sort of games that we enjoy playing.
Yep.
But right now, gaming goals time. What has kept you occupied?
This week's been a rough week, so I haven't gotten as much done as I wanted to. But I've played a little bit more Persona 5 and gotten through another story arc with Period Cube. So that's pretty much it. That sums up my week as short and sweet.
Has Period Cube continued to unlock its secrets, or is it just what we feared and just substandard writing and there are plot holes? There's no mystery to fill in these gaps.
Still a couple of plot holes, and I think I've ranted to you about some of them. I don't want to spoil anything on here because, again, there are some visual novels that will lock a character away. So you have to go down like the several different paths before you can get to what's considered the canonical one.
Mm-hmm.
And
the true path.
yes, the true ending. So I haven't unlocked that yet. So I'm hoping, I'm like going to give it the benefit of the doubt still that once I reach that, then it will clarify a lot of the things that are currently really irritating me. So...
Isn't that exactly what you want to feel as you enjoy a game? Oh, it's so irritating.
I enjoy some aspects of it. Some of it's nice and I can get lost in some of the fun banter between characters and enjoy that side of things. It's when they get to the nitty-gritty or the trying to explain how they are stuck in the world that they're stuck in and the logistics of them then being able to leave for a couple of hours and then get pulled back in and all that stuff. I ask myself, I'm like, how does that work? You're not explaining how this works. It's just this big glaring hole. At least like with Steins Gate, they probably whack you over the head too much with the science behind everything, but at least, man, they justify everything.
It makes sense.
Yes.
It's not just, oh, we're using magic to
It just happens.
do this.
Yes. And, I think I would probably be more accepting if it was set in more of a magical realm as opposed to one that's supposed to be the real world and then have this stuff happen, When it's set in the real world, you're supposed to abide by real world rules.
Yes.
So look, I'm ranting. I was going to save that for when I'm done.
Sorry.
So your turn. How are you
just
going with
opened
your
the
gaming goals?
floodgates.
Yes, you did.
Apologies. Well, as we've established, I am trying to knock out, I've got 3 games in the Yakuza series left to go before we go to Japan, and it has just stopped. Because last week on my future tense gaming goals, I was discussing the fact that my buddy the Falcon has been playing Dark Souls, and I had a Dark Souls itch in my brain, which may or may not turn out to be a sunlight maggot.
Ew.
Yeah.
So gross.
Now, I have tried to play Dark Souls twice before, the first Dark Souls.
Yep.
The first time I ran, I can do this without a guide, and the mechanics and the bonfires and the humanity and the hollowing and all these other game design things, I had no idea what was going on. I spec'd my character terribly. I was weak. I was basically made of paper mache and didn't enjoy it. Second time, I decided to use a guide and got frustrated because it kept trying to make me do hard areas early on to get good gear, and I quit. But this time, boy, it has consumed my head. In 1 and a bit sessions, admittedly large sessions, I made almost double the progress that I ever did with Dark Souls previously this week. And that's very exciting because it was a game that I thought, well, I'm never going to get to enjoy this. It's like a defining moment in the history of gaming, and I'm just stupid and I suck at it. I'm terrible. And I love it now. I am just so excited to play even the simplest session and take this from someone who once vomited with excitement in the realm of video games. Have you never heard that story?
No.
Okay, if we cast our minds back to about 1993, you know I was a big Sega fan. We didn't have our own console. I'd only played it at a friend's house, and we went shopping to get our own Sega Master System 2.
And
it had
threw up with
Alex
excitement?
Kidd in Miracle World built in, and we got to the car park after we'd purchased it, and I threw up
From excitement.
from excitement.
Oh my
and my
goodness.
father just goes, "Oh, Brennan, would you settle down?" Just like, as I'm just, So if I'm sitting there playing Dark Souls and you see me start to go pale with excitement, you can just, he's gonna be
How have I never heard this story?
it's like,
In all of our years.
well, we are obviously confessing our embarrassing histories and moments
we
in this
really
episode,
are.
aren't we?
Oh my goodness. I don't even know how to react to this. Like, who throws up from excitement?
You can throw up from excitement.
That just seems weird though. Like, I understand throwing up from like
Anxiety.
exactly. But that seems counterintuitive with the excitement.
Hey, all those sort of things are very similar physiologically.
I suppose. You do react oddly to some things, I must say. You get very amped up and like you almost like someone stuck you with a needle full of adrenaline for the stupidest things. I love you.
Like
But-
buying Sega consoles when you don't have a console at home.
This has clearly been a problem from a very young age.
I'm just built poorly.
Where are the patches for Brendo? We
Yeah,
need
hey.
to get the bug fixes for you. When's that going to happen?
I need DLC.
Oh my goodness. That is hilarious.
I'm so sorry that I revealed that on our podcast. I thought I might have mentioned it at some point in our relationship, but
Oh,
please still love me.
Of course I do. I've heard worse stories. If we're going to go through embarrassing stories, I've got some doozies from your childhood that we could share with everyone, but they have nothing to do with video games.
Well, let's cut to a break right now.
Share the love. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaming Lovers.
We have many games in our library which we love, but are kind of embarrassing to admit how much we love them. And we're going to go through our favourite guilty pleasures and flops, games that perhaps weren't so well received by the public or by critics, but that we still have fond memories of, or still will enjoy the replay through today. Some probably need a bit more justification than others.
Yeah, well, no one's going to criticise you if you're playing the hot new thing.
Yeah.
And it's selling millions of copies worldwide, and you're going. People ask you, "So what are you playing?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm playing Zelda Breath of the Wild or whatever." You know, people are not going to go, "Okay, nice work." You know, there's a certain level of respect that a good game gets. You're
Absolutely.
like, "Oh, excellent, you're playing that. I'll get to that one day. It sounds like it's really good." That's if you're a civil gamer, which are rare occasionally.
They exist. They are unicorns, but they exist.
Excellent. However, once a game starts to be on the seedier end of the review scale,
Mm-hmm.
you almost don't want to go anywhere near it.
Yeah.
You don't want to catch that shame.
So here is our list of our favourite guilty pleasures / flops that we love. So we're going to go a bit back and forth, I think. Split it
I
evenly.
came prepared, trust me.
Ugh.
I just had to take a glance at some of the shockers that are in my shelf, and I'm like, oh, this is actually going to be a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm. And I think I was shocked at just how many, I guess, were on my list. I didn't think I would have as many as you, but we're pretty actually even. So here we go. At the top of my list, or at the beginning of my list, this is no particular order. It's not like they're ranked or anything, but WWE games. They actually have quite a fun place in my heart because some of the earliest gaming that we did as friends before we ever started dating was play WWE games as a group together at my house. We would come over, you'd come over like Sunday afternoons, we'd play, we'd eat pizza, and we would play like SmackDown or Raw, whichever edition was out that year.
We'd have characters that were created to look vaguely like action figures of us.
Yes.
Badly made Chinese knockoff action figures of us. Because the character creator wasn't all that sharp on that earlier ones.
But to be fair, I think in some of the newer versions of it, there's been less customization, at least with the girls. I kind of got mad at 2K because they eliminated a lot of my favourite things that were in some of the editions at like 2007, 2008 era. So the graphics might have improved somewhat since then, but they also cut out like a lot of features that we enjoyed. I think in a lot of newer versions, they don't let females play against male characters. So if we created characters of ourselves, we wouldn't be able to have matches together in a lot of new versions.
Which we could do back in like 2006, 2007 editions, but then they sort of phased that out.
Yes.
However, on a side note, there's a new NBA game coming out very soon that actually has a story mode where you can play as a woman going through the women's NBA.
I wonder if, because we have like the AFL games that come out here in Australia, I wonder if they'll have one for the female league or like a version of that added or like DLC added to those games. Should be interesting to see.
Well, trust me, if I actually enjoyed playing the atrocious AFL games that I've played, they would be on this list, but I did not enjoy them. They are not guilty pleasures.
That is the key, is that they're not just guilty pleasures or flops, they're the ones that we actually love. And this is all very like subjective, obviously, but so is most gaming.
Yeah. The WWE games in particular these days, we both love wrestling, and the rosters are enormous.
Yeah.
But pretty much all it's got going for it. There's an absence of any sort of good story mode. There's no real fun to be had.
There was one thing I liked in one of the recent ones where you could start off at NXT and kind of build up your career, and you could choose like what kind of matches you would take, whether you'd want one that would give you more money or one that gives you more publicity and more fans and things like that. And I'm like, that was kind of cool seeing that. It was a weak story, but it was still something.
It's good until you have to face Zack Ryder for like 6 consecutive weeks.
Although we love Zack Ryder.
Yes.
Poor guy gets so underutilized.
Yes.
All right, your turn.
All right, there was a game on the Nintendo Wii called Disaster, Day of Crisis. Basically,
Yay.
you're a secret agent. I can't even really remember. But you're trying to survive basically every natural disaster that could possibly happen to your city is happening. We've got earthquakes, we've got tornadoes, we've got firestorms, we've got some terrorist activity mixed in there for fun, typhoons, tsunamis, you name it, it's happening, and you have to survive it. And it reviewed terribly. I don't think I saw any reviews before I bought this game. And I really enjoyed it. And I lent it to a friend. They said, hey, you got anything I can play? And I'm like, I've got just the game for you. And it was back on my doorstep within 48 hours. And he said, this game is terrible. And I'm like, oh, no.
Ouch. That's the worst, is when you actually really like a game, but your friends don't. And you kind of question yourself. You're like, did I enjoy this game? Or like, do I have bad taste? Or are they stupid? And so you kind of go through that motion of where you're not sure which is which. Makes you question everything.
When you put the big rubber stamp on it and say, this gets my tick of approval, and it's absolute garbage.
And they'll never trust you again.
Yeah, well, I'm sad about that. I really liked that game. It was terrible. This is like the equivalent of like a D-grade movie, but...
Sometimes they can be really fun, though. Sometimes cheesy and, being bad works for a game, and I think that works really well for my next game,
What do you have for us?
Goat Simulator. Definitely a guilty pleasure. Like, we even bother to hunt trophies in this stupid broken game. And it was started off as like an April Fool's joke, and it has turned into this beast of a game, and now they've got all these parodies and stuff with like Payday in there and zombie outbreaks and stuff, like all these other modes that you can play on, which are so much stupid fun. And it's the most fun when it glitches out. And you know, you don't usually say that about a game unless it's designed to be like that.
If this game launched and wasn't supposed to be this janky, it would get torn to shreds.
Absolutely.
But it's almost, its charm is that, oh, look, I'm stuck in a rock again. Oh, wonderful. Oh, my head's tilting sideways and is long because it got caught in the doorway.
My tongue is stuck the other side of the world and it has gone the whole way across the map. Things like that. The stupid things you do in that game and the annoying music, and there's lots of little Easter eggs and references to plenty of other stuff, and I think that's where it thrives. It thrives in this era of pop culture, and it's very meta, I guess, in a day and age that likes to make meta jokes about its products.
But if one of your peers walked in and you were playing Goat Simulator in your spare time, how would that make them feel?
Depends on who it is. Kids find it funny. Adults are kind of confused. They're like, they're like, what is the point of this game? And you're like, you play as a goat and you run around and destroy things. It is really deep. But that being said, there are still far more embarrassing games in my mind to be caught playing than Goat Simulator, so it's not as bad. I will willingly admit that I play that. There are others that I might be a little more embarrassed to share.
Yeah, this list is sort of split. Some of them are games that aren't necessarily terrible, but they're more embarrassing that you admit that they've captured your affections.
Yes.
There are other ones, however, that did very badly commercially.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst part about gaming, it will be on this list several times, is that when there is a series that you absolutely adore, and the first one comes out and you're like, oh, this is pretty good. Then you get the second, the third, and you're like, yes, give me more. I want to consume this. And then the series starts to fall off a cliff and you're like, no, but I have to buy the next Silent Hill game. I like Silent Hill, right?
Yeah. You want to support the developers in the studio, and then they take that loyalty and I can't think of a nice way to word this.
Poop on it?
They blow a raspberry at it. There we go.
Oh, no. Poop raspberry. Myself and my good buddy the Falcon, who I referred to many times in here, we used to play through the entire Silent Hill series each year on an annual basis when there was only 2 or 3 or 4 games. But then I can't remember the last time we actually even referred to Silent Hill Homecoming or Silent Hill Downpour. 2 games that are quite atrocious, but I feel like I have to hold them. They're part of the Silent Hill family. You may have 6 kids, and the last 2 that you had are misbehaving and absolute little turds, but they're still your family. That's my parallel. The thing that annoyed me the most, I play with inverted aim on a Y-axis.
Yep.
You could not even adjust the aim on Silent Hill Homecoming.
Hate that.
That's how bad it was technically, on a technical level. Shameful. Shameful. But I still like it.
Yep.
It's like an abusive relationship. Silent Hill Homecoming does not treat me good at all, but I keep going back to it. It'll change this time.
Oh, sweetie, you need to find a new game.
Okay.
Okay? One that will love you back. One game I keep going back to, even though I think I've beaten it several times and then I delete it and start again, is Tiny Tower on my phone. And
My goodness, that was like one of the first things you ever downloaded on your first iPhone.
Yes, it's been around for a while, and it was so popular it even turned into like a little TV show. I don't know if it's TV show, but it was definitely on YouTube. There was like a series, and a web series, I guess. So it had success commercially. But it's more of a guilty pleasure. It's the kind of thing that, like, if I have some time to kill, I'll sneak out my phone and just quickly restock all my stores. And I'm so nitpicky with this game. I will even have people that work at certain stores will have uniforms. So I will customize it so that they're all wearing the same costumes. So I know that that's the store that they work at. And yeah, it's...
See, that is one aspect that you and I just
don't agree on.
do not agree on. If I have 5 minutes of spare time to be gaming, I'll be leveling up a character in a JRPG to make the next story segment a little bit easier.
But you don't always have that option. The thing is, like, you're not always going to be able to play console games or even your Vita that properly, because and with JRPGs or even like a visual novel, if I start playing it, I don't want to put it down. I can put Tiny Tower down. I can look at it briefly and then put it down.
That is the best part about spreading out the grind of a JRPG, which is the worst part of it. I've been seen to go on a metro platform. Oh, my train's due in 90 seconds. It's not here yet. Pull it out. Pull out my Vita. Start a fight. All right, I've got to put it away now. Straight away. Here comes the train. I've got to drive.
That would drive me nuts. That would drive me nuts.
Just means I've got 12 more experience points than I did before I did that little segment.
There are times when I even have like a full half an hour of free time and I'm like, no, that's not enough to get it stuck into like an RPG. I need like a good hour at least so I don't feel like I haven't had time to enjoy the game. Otherwise, I feel like I've barely done anything in it, you know? Yeah. There's so much to do and you want to immerse yourself in those stories that if you dive in or only dip your toe in and then have to go and do other stuff, you kind of feel resentful to what it is you have to go do. So the beauty of a lot of mobile games is that you can go in, play them, be diverted for a little time, but then not feel angry that you have to put it down. You can just go, okay, cool. All right, let's focus on this now. And that's why I love a lot of mobile games. But Tiny Tower is just one of those ones that I constantly go back to.
I do love there is like a minimum amount of time you have to be able to have free to game. I've been coordinating with my buddy the Falcon more than usual. And we're like, oh, I'd only be able to come over for like 3.5 hours. Is there even really any point? It's just so weird, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, gaming, especially if it's, not just party games and stuff, but story-based games or things that have long campaigns, you require more time than others. So if you were only playing something like Mario Kart or casual games like that, then you could literally just play them for half an hour or an hour and it'd be okay. But when you're playing co-op games together that have story campaigns, you want to give them the time that they need and not rush it.
Eaten.
Exactly. So it's one of those dilemmas, and I think it's like a lot of young parents, like with like fresh babies, often suffer from that because they only have very small windows of time where they can relax and enjoy themselves, and so they can't really play a lot of new big RPGs or anything like that because they can't invest the time into them because they only have so much time or energy. Mm-hmm. So they tend to change the kind of games that they play to suit their new lifestyle. So we've gotten slightly off track.
Yeah, where are we? Let me check the mini-map. All right, let me tell you a little thing. When I research what to play, or more often than not, what to buy and put on my shelf indefinitely because it's on sale, it'll simply because I'll read a community blog or something, an article titled, Why You Should Play Alpha Protocol. And I'm like, Alpha Protocol? What the heck is that? And there's two things that I look up immediately. I see what the developer is. Oh, it's Obsidian Entertainment. They made Knights of the Old Republic 2. Mm. They made Fallout New Vegas, I think. Mm. I'm like, interesting. Let me check the review score. Oh, 55%.
Ouch.
Something like that. However, I bought it for $3.
Not bad.
Physical disc and everything. So I decided, yes, I will buy Alpha Protocol and I will play it because it is praised for its conversation system. You know how your boss will say something to you. You'll have 4 options show up, Mass Effect style, with a timer, and you've got to make a choice, sort of like a Mass Effect Telltale game, sort of hybrid as far as that goes. However, it is so incredibly complex that the people you're playing as a spy. The people you work with can either like you or dislike you based off your answer, your behavior, the way you achieve your mission objectives. The way if you shoot people in the head, the tech guy will get upset because he thinks, oh, you're just one of those assassin types or whatever. And everyone has an opinion on everything you do. And your teammates can turn traitor on you. You can end up recruiting enemies to your side. You can romance the assassin that's sent to kill you. You can change almost anybody's alignment in that game, which would be fantastic if the game itself played well. If it was a visual novel style and it was just conversations, 10 out of 10. Perfect game. But you've got janky combat, you've got glitching through walls, you've got enemy AI that's about as dumb as a bar of soap.
Well, when you've got annoying controls, then that's kind of what you want.
But the best part is it's built so badly you can pretty much spec yourself out to be invisible, invincible, and one-shot kill if you level up the right skill trees. Did I mention it has skill trees? You can hack, you can lockpick, you can demolition expert. It's pretty good if it played well. I still enjoyed it. I wish I could enjoy it more, but I will always have a special glitchy place in my heart for Alpha Protocol, no matter how bad it is.
One of my nearest and dearest, definitely a guilty pleasure, but also considered a flop by many, which I feel like I want to argue that point a little bit because I don't know if I agree. But that could just be total bias. And I think most people can probably guess Dragon Age 2. It's been mentioned time and time again on this podcast. I love Dragon Age 2. Most people do not. It's kind of considered the bung game in the series of Dragon Age games. But it still has, in my mind, a great story, even though it's somewhat more linear than all the others. It's still got really interesting characters, and some of my favourite characters, like Varric, is easily one of the best dwarves ever, and so funny and so well acted and everything.
And he shaves his face. That's unusual for a dwarf.
Yes, he does not have a beard. And the banter and stuff like that, it still has a lot of key elements that you come to know and love from BioWare games.
Yeah, just like Alpha Protocol, the bits that are good are great, but there's so much substandard stuff that just drags the average well down.
Absolutely.
It's a shame.
A lot of repetitive maps, unfortunately. The combat is pretty easy. You can literally just kind of mash one button and you don't have to customize it as much as the other games give you that option to, or kind of force you into being more strategic because of difficult boss fights or things like that. The only boss fight that really gives you pause in Dragon Age 2 that I can think of off the top of my head is against the Arashok, who completely annihilated me the first time, especially playing as a mage who has very little health. You can get destroyed quite quickly with a giant axe sword thing straight through the gut. So yeah, but aside from that, they added and they kind of fixed some stuff with DLC that got brought to the game later on, but a lot of the time people's minds are made up once the game is out and won't even necessarily look at some DLC if they've already had a bad taste in their mouth, you know?
Absolutely.
Which is kind of a shame. It's still a game that I play through like I play through all of them pretty much on a yearly basis. So it's just, I'm so protective of Dragon Age in general, but I feel like it gets such a negative rap from everyone.
And it's hard, again, like we said with my disaster of a recommendation of disaster. It is hard to say I love this game to someone else because they will look at it or they'll play it and they're just like, this is terrible.
Yeah. Or even to like fellow fans of Dragon Age, there are some who will say that they love Dragon Age but still hate Dragon Age 2 and will play Origins and might play Inquisition but refuse to play number 2 and because of the reputation that it has. And will tear you to shreds online or whatever for admitting that you like it. Like, the fandoms can be pretty brutal.
Yeah, that is one of my least favourite things about gaming in general is that you can't wade through any comment section of anything
Mm-hmm.
because there'll be nothing positive there. Might be the one guy saying, "Oh, this game, it will always have a special place in my heart," and everyone else is like, "Oh my gosh, you play this game, it sucks."
Uh-huh.
You suck.
You're such an idiot. I can't believe you like it. And then I don't know what it is about comment sections. I have this weird compulsion to click and read through stuff, and then I get really upset. And I'm like, why did I do this? I'm like, I got to stop doing this. But you know that meme? I think it's of Michael Jackson sitting in a cinema eating popcorn. Sometimes you go to read
if
the...
it's lighthearted, it can
Yeah.
be fun, but a lot of the time it's just
But
depressing.
it can become venomous and toxic very quickly. And that's the sad thing about, I think, modern day internet especially.
You still talking about Dragon Age 2?
Well, just in general, like...
I was saying you're going to be
if we were-
feminist and toxic quite quickly to your health. One of my next ones, the Resident Evil series, like the Silent Hill series, had its ups and then it had a little bit of downs, and now it seems to be back on the upswing again because they've reinvented the wheel as they do in that series every couple of entries.
With the VR installment, it's done really well.
There was, however, a plethora of side games released. There was Resident Evil Survivor, which was a light gun game that you controlled walking using buttons on a gun, which is about as terrible as you would imagine trying to control that. It's like you held two buttons to walk forward, but if you wanted to turn, you had to let go of one and push it again, and it was just an absolute mess. And you'd end up walking into a wall with a zombie eating your back. I still had a bit of fun with that. However, that is not what's going to be my guilty pleasure. My guilty pleasure out of the Resident Evil series, Resident Evil Outbreak and Outbreak File 2. Now, they were built to be basically online co-op classic Resident Evil style gameplay. However, it was on the PS2 where you had to buy an entire add-on to play online, and your internet speed back then probably was not going to hold up with online gameplay. There's a reason why online gaming didn't really hit full gear until the 360 PS3 era. This is a key example. Add into the fact that you open a door, okay? Let's just say you've opened the door right about now. Loading screen. We're just waiting for the room to load. And okay, the level's loaded, and we're taking about 6 steps. We're going to a next door. Can you see what the problem's going to be? You're spending a lot of this game watching doors open in very slow animation.
Door opening simulator.
Yeah. Now, I really dug this game for one key reason. That was you give me a checklist pre-achievement, pre-trophy era to unlock alternate costumes, not purchasing them like the DLC era, and I was a happy, happy little boy. I would sit through hours of sessions collecting useless little trinkets in this game to unlock such characters as Zombie Fireman and Stick Figure Red. You could play as stick figures. That was kind of fun. But there was like a whole lot of characters to unlock. You give me a game where I can unlock stuff, it doesn't matter how bad the game is. The game was pretty bad.
I think that's kind of the point of this list.
Well, I really liked those games. I sincerely wish there was a way to speed up those loading times.
Yes. That was an issue with a game that's going to be mentioned a little later on this list.
Oh.
But it got fixed. Thank goodness for patches.
Well, can I just remember one other thing about poor Resident Evil Outbreak? You could emote by using certain D-pad combinations, and your character would like call out to another character around like, Cindy, come on. The problem is the character would say, come on, and the subtitle would say, come over here. Or things like that. I'm in trouble. And it would say, someone help me, as the subtitle. And this was for almost every soundbite.
Oh, dear.
It was pretty bad. I still really liked those games, though.
Ugh.
What's next?
Final Fantasy XIII, the trilogy. This is a game that we both enjoyed, and many other friends of ours did not. And fair enough, like the first playthrough, my goodness, we were like, what on earth is happening in this game? And what is the lore of this world? Like, it was pretty poorly explained.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure you had no experience with Final Fantasy, so you started watching cutscenes online before I started playing.
Yes.
Then you co-piloted me, and you had the benefit of having prior knowledge, so you sort of understood what was going on.
A little, but it didn't help much.
Final Fantasy X, for example, you play as someone who has no idea where they are. They have no idea how this world works once you get past the intro. And so as the player, you're sort of introduced to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is a sport here. It's called Blitzball. This is the city of Besaid Island or whatever. And this is a summoner. This is what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They explain everything. Final Fantasy 13, they drop you in as if you're like, is this like the third game in this series? Because everyone's using terms like Seath and Lassie and Cocoon and Pulse and Grand Pulse. And I'm like, I have no idea what's happening. And I feel dumb. My wife's looking at me for answers and I don't know what is happening. I don't know who this is.
Yep. And
I
you
don't know
don't
what their
really know.
motivation is.
You're like, who is the bad guy in this? I'm like, I'm assuming people that are fighting my character are bad, but that could be wrong. I could be the bad guy for all I know. I don't know. It's not explaining itself very well. And there's a lot of ambiguity in this game. But that wasn't the only issue that people had with Final Fantasy 13. There was issue with like the combat style. There were issues with it being far more linear and not open world.
Well, the combat style was just like you said with Dragon Age 2. The first 20 hours, you don't even unlock all your abilities, so you're basically just going X, 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 X. Oh, I won the fight. X, X, X. I won the fight. Yay. Where's my commands? This is terrible. The game starts off so slowly and so linearly. You basically have to play for 50 hours before you get an open world to explore.
And even that's only like a small section. And that's in just the first game, right?
And the biggest problem that a lot of people had was the character of Vanille. Her voice, her mood, her smile.
The only Aussie character in the game, and she is irritating as all heck. I wanted to like her. Oh, we actually named a ferret after her, more because we thought it was a cute name.
Well, with the lead into Final Fantasy 13-2 coming out, I decided after I'd already beaten Final Fantasy 13 several months to a year earlier, whatever it was, to give it another spin. And I greatly enjoyed my second playthrough of that. I understood what everything was.
Yeah.
Now, if you have to play through a game once that takes like 120 hours to actually understand it on the second time through, that's bad game design. I'll admit it. However, the story, which I understood probably about 15% of my first time through, made a lot more sense and I thought was really good. And even the sequels were a little hit and miss.
Yeah.
There was Final Fantasy 13-2 and then Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns.
Yeah.
Controversial opinion, Final Fantasy 13-2 may be my favourite Final Fantasy game of all time.
It's because you like Sarah.
Sarah's a good character.
I don't know. I don't know. I love Laura Bailey. She's a great actress. Sarah didn't... I don't know what it was about Sarah, but I'm just like,
Nope.
I
don't care about your opinion. It's true. And Noel started off as that sort of, oh, he's just a pretty boy. But he has excellent character growth. Caius Ballard is probably my favourite Final Fantasy villain. Again, that's saying something. I loved the time travel with you go to the future, you go to the past, you alter this and you get stuff here and you do that. And
It was cool seeing Hope, who's like a little boy in the first one, be all grown up in number 2. That was kind of fun seeing, like, this is your life, this is where you are later on.
There was always something that people didn't like about the Final Fantasy 13 games. Final Fantasy Lightning Returns basically had a time limit similar to Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, Dead Rising, games that people love the games, hate the time limit.
Mm-hmm.
It puts too much pressure on me.
It
I'm
stresses
getting
you
crushed.
out. Absolutely.
But I loved Dead Rising for that reason. I loved Lightning Returns for that reason. Admittedly, I used a guide, which helped.
Always helps. Any Japanese game, really, I feel like you need a guide. You can get so easily lost otherwise and really muck up your game and then feel like you've got to go almost back to the start to really undo all the knots that you've done. But I just love the character of Lightning. She is just one of my favourite gaming characters, and I've
And people just, there is, for whatever reason, like we said before, that just abundance of hate towards certain games. The Final Fantasy 13 trilogy gets so much hate.
It does.
From Final Fantasy fans, from people who hate Final Fantasy, people who have never even sniffed a Final Fantasy will point fingers at it and say,
They'll
that's
jump
a bad
on the
game.
bandwagon because it's cool to make fun of
Exactly.
it.
If you have not played a game, you cannot criticise that it's a bad game. That's Brendo's opinion right here. You heard it here. I will back that up.
You don't have a legitimate argument against it because it's an uneducated opinion. You don't have any findings to back you up. Okay.
Now you have other people's findings.
No, but how do you know that other people's findings would be what your findings are? Like, even if you've got someone that has similar tastes to you, there's still things that you would disagree on. There's still things that we disagree on. We have similar tastes in a lot of areas, but there's still other stuff that we have very big differences on, and that's okay. Because we are individuals and we are allowed to like different things. So you might be listening to this and going, Final Fantasy 13 sucks, and that's cool. You don't have to like it, but we do.
The cast of characters got a lot of flack. People complained that they were just two-dimensional. Lightning is tough and emotionless. Snow is bro-ish. Hope is a sook. Vanille is annoying and has a fake laugh. Guess what? There's a reason for that, and it's acted to perfection.
Just like the Titus laugh that everyone gets so upset about. Oh my goodness. Seriously, if you think that that's a bad laugh or bad acting, then you don't understand the scene.
It is a good, bad laugh.
Yes, that was
It
the
is
point.
designed to be a bad laugh.
And if you play in the Japanese version, it's done the same way. It's the whole point is that Titus is doing a deliberately stupid laugh to try to cheer up his friend. End of story.
Let's move on from Final Fantasy. 'Cause I can
Let's.
just sit here and just argue about the stupidity of humanity complaining about stupid things in Final Fantasy.
All right,
At least
on to your
Final
next
Fantasy
one then.
15 was relatively loved by the people.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I had low hopes for that game. It actually blew me away. It was so good.
Yep, made me cry. Thanks, Final Fantasy 15.
Well, just like the bad good laugh, or the good bad laugh, I can't remember which way I even said it, I have a game that I would unequivocally call, and I don't know which way to put this, the worst best game I've ever played, or the best worst game I've ever played, and that is Deadly Premonition. It's apparently starts off like a Resident Evil 4 clone, camera over the shoulder, survival horror. Oh wait, there's an open world. You can drive your car, you're a detective, you have side quests. Time of day, there's food, you have to shave. You have to shave
Who
and you
cares
have
about
to
shaving?
change your outfit or flies follow you around. You have a strange Twin Peaks style city. Unfortunately, the graphics look like they were built out of cardboard, and the music kicks into strange volume and breaks the mood because a track starts playing out of nowhere and it's all happy and chirpy when it should kick in about 30 seconds later. It's a weird game. It is terrible. I laughed my butt off at it, and controversial reviewer Jim Sterling gave it a 10 out of 10 at Destructoid.com well back when he was employed by them. Yeah, not what you would want to put a 10 out of 10 on, but he said it is so bad I had such a good time playing it. 10 out of 10.
That sounds like the kind of reviews people put on Steam or like Amazon and stuff, like the cheeky reviews that they give. Like, I died while mowing the lawn. 11 out of 10 would die again.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Well, I don't know how to defend it. There's no possible way Deadly Premonition's a 10 out of 10. Myself and the Falcon endured it, and we still quote it. We still whistle the tune from it. We still talk to empty coffee mugs. We have a lot of memories from it, even though it is a steaming pile of garbage.
Wait. You talk to empty coffee mugs?
Well, Zach, FK in the coffee, what could it mean? You play as Francis York Morgan, who speaks to an imaginary person in his head called Zach.
Okay.
And so he'll be mid-conversation with someone, then start talking to Zach. What do you think, Zach? Are they telling us the truth? I recommend everybody look up a trailer for Deadly Premonition and tell me that does not look like the game of the millennium.
That sounds like it could be a really funny TV show, actually, if you leaned into the silliness.
Half the charm is the atrocious graphics and combat and driving.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side, and you could be featured in the next podcast.
So what else have you got that you're embarrassed to say that you enjoyed?
This one's one of those ones where I'm not embarrassed necessarily. It's just strange or hard to explain if people kind of are like looking over your shoulder and you're like, what are you playing?
Oh, who's the handsome boy on the screen?
Yes, especially some of the cheesy dialogue and stuff. So this is kind of like an umbrella that's going to cover a couple of games that fall under the umbrella of visual novels.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there are some great visual novels out there, ones that I'm certainly not ashamed at all to be playing, like Steins Gate and 999 and Danganronpa, things like that I would kind of say are under that umbrella. Then there are these ones that are more like the romance ones. They're essentially... choose the boy you like and romance. And it's still all very sweet and innocent, but it's gushy and it's a little embarrassing to admit you play them when you're... So there's Code Realize, Nor 9, Period Cube, which is the game that I'm currently playing through, which all have sufficiently cheesy dialogue and somewhat predictable storylines and some very strange pacings and things like that, but are still games that I love to play, and I am clearly not alone because they are still rated as some of the best visual novels, at least available on the Vita, currently out at the moment. A lot of these fall in at least the top 20, so They're not flops. They're just a little embarrassing.
The Vita did become a haven for a lot of Japanese visual novels.
Yes.
Just get a new text coat of paint, keep the Japanese dialogue, that's fine, and release it and people will buy it. And the Vita was also a haven for obscure JRPGs.
Yeah.
One of my favourite genres.
Yes.
So I would have all the classic Final Fantasy games on there, and then I wanted more JRPGs. There's Hyperdimension Neptunia. There's
Persona.
Persona. I want more JRPGs. Oh, something else came out. What's this? I've bought it. I'm playing it. It's a little bit booby.
Fan service, I believe, is the term.
Fan service galore. I have played weird games where you pair up the protagonist with a partner.
Yeah.
They have a ritual called classmating, and then you fight with the freshly born child that then will help you in combat, and you have an army of children things.
And it has the most embarrassing song that plays when the new child comes into the world. Congratulations on your new arrival.
Badly congratulations.
Which, and we say that to each other so much. Is like anytime someone says the word congratulations, we just have to start singing that song.
Congratulations.
So it's become like an in-joke with us. So that's, it's a stupid idea, but it's still fun to play and it's still hilarious, and that just because something's weird isn't necessarily bad.
Just like there's a lot of TV shows where there's always going to be that 20-second scene that you don't want anyone to walk in with because they're just going to think, what the heck are you watching?
Absolutely.
It's the same with some of these Japanese RPGs and things. There's just that little, it's like, oh my gosh, I hope no one's looking over my shoulder at the moment. Or someone's coming to spin the game. What?
Yep. And so many of these, is it otomote, how it's pronounced?
For the
romance visual novels.
female protagonist
Yes.
romance visual novels, yeah.
Yes.
Otome.
And they, otome games, they usually have like these beautifully drawn still frame bits, like when you get to a certain like major part of the game. And those are the bits I'm always, even if I'm playing next to Brendo, I'll get embarrassed. I'll be like, no, I'm romancing this guy, and don't watch me while I'm. This is awkward.
While I'm being charmed by the big bad wolf.
Pretty much. While it's like the big kiss or something like that. It's one of those things. It's like watching any romance scene in a movie with like your parents. It's that somewhat uncomfortable.
I'm gonna go get a drink.
You know, so it's like that for me. So I don't go near the more risque visual novels. I think these ones they're marketed at more teenagers, so they're safer. But they're still embarrassing as anything to admit that you played them. But hey, you get a lot of good trophies. They're very easy to get the platinum on, so that's a bonus.
Just like a trashy rom-com on Netflix.
Yes, exactly. Like those ones that everyone was talking about. I think was it at Christmas, like the A Christmas Prince that came out at Netflix that everyone was like, oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
It was like, we love it. It's so bad. It's so good. Kind of so predictable, but yay. I think we've lost that corny fluff a little bit in today's cinema, I think. Everything's got to be a bit more gritty or dirty or whatever. So it's nice to have things that are just fluff.
That's actually not a bad selling point. When you said A Christmas Prince, just every fibre of my being just went, oh. Ugh.
But the response it got was just, hey, there are a lot of people that really want this again, you know, clean content that is heartwarming and thoroughly predictable, cheesy as anything, slightly bad acting, but still makes you go, oh. And, you know, it went gangbusters. People were watching it on repeat, like, once it launched over and over again. And so, you know, when you look at that and see the statistics, I think that there is a lot to be said for having, I guess, maybe a renaissance of that kind of entertainment coming back a little bit.
Boy, I hope so, because I am so sick of everything being so dark and gritty and mature and violent and profanity galore. And
I think there is a place for that, but I wish that there was more of a balance. I think we've leaned a little too heavily on one side and we're lacking in the other. So I'm always up for more of the light fluff. I think that's why I love watching Korean dramas on Netflix, because they're just so cheesy and fluffy. And the kiss scenes are terrible but hilarious at the same time. If you have never seen it, you just need to do yourself a favor and at least like look up a montage on YouTube and have a good laugh.
Just leave your menu sitting on one of them on Netflix. It'll start playing by itself.
Yes. So I guess in a way, visual novels are very similar, I guess, in the way that they're paced and stuff like that. Am I blushing? I feel like I'm blushing.
Yeah, you are blushing. This truly is a guilty pleasure of yours.
All right, your turn for a guilty pleasure then, mister.
Okay, well, the one I was going to put down, this is sort of an iffy one because since it launched, it has been repaired, basically. But when it launched, Prey, which I played through recently, reviewed fairly badly and did not sell very well at all, which is a shame because more people should have played Prey. It was phenomenal. Now, I have lent Prey to the Falcon. And I'm scared this is going to be another disaster situation all over again where I've said, hey, you got to play this, you got to play this. And then he plays it and just goes, I'm unfriending you on PlayStation Network. Prey I loved. I've talked about Prey enough on this podcast. That's for certain. But it was a game that mechanically, again, loading screens on that game, atrocious. Just like I said with Resident Evil. You go into a new area and Prey, I'm talking 2 minutes to load up the new area.
Yep.
That's a long time. That's enough time for you to get out of the zone, pick up your phone, check social media.
You would go and make yourself like a cup of coffee or like do things in the kitchen. I saw you doing the dishes every time you did a loading screen in one of your playthroughs, and I'm like, how do you have time to do that? Like, how long is this loading screen? So that's pretty bad if
Yeah.
they're that long.
I've gone to see you in another room and you said, why is the Xbox still on? I go, I'm still playing. It's loading. That's why I've come to see you, because it's loading. I haven't walked off and just left the console on standby. It's still playing.
That said, our Xbox has been mysteriously just turning itself on these days, even though we're not touching it or we're using something else.
Does anyone else have this problem?
It's
Because
so weird.
it's creepy.
It's like it's possessed. It's freaking me out.
I thought maybe the front sensor, because it's got one of those like sensors, not really a button. It's like you just
Yeah.
touch the console and it turns on. I thought maybe that had like a fluff on it or something. So I wiped it down and cleaned it and pushed it a little bit, creaked it, and then it still just turns on randomly.
I wonder if our neighbor has like a remote that uses the same wavelengths, and that every time they turn something on or off in their house, that it triggers our Xbox. It's super weird.
It could be.
So strange. Anyways, one of my other guilty pleasures, Animal Crossing in all its forms, from the DS to my phone. That sucker is everywhere and I can't avoid it. Or do I want to?
Well, it depends. Do you want to? Or is it something you would play in public?
Yes. I would, without the volume though. The sound is usually turned off. It's too embarrassing.
Now,
sounds.
I just think the apprehension from that comes from what age group do you think that game's targeted at?
Much younger.
Have a guess.
10-year-olds.
Okay. What multiplication would you have to add to that to make it your age?
Don't do that.
Okay.
Don't do that. Hey, I think this is the case for a lot of games that are from Nintendo, right? That they're targeted for a younger audience, but I would still argue that maybe the majority of people who play it are actually closer to my age.
Could be.
Yeah. So there are some jokes and stuff in there that seem like they would go over the heads of kids. But it is a little annoying when I'm playing Animal Crossing, the camper one, on my phone. And if I'm playing like late at night, right as I'm kind of getting ready for bed, and it might be after midnight, anytime I interact with one of the animals, they'd be like, "Isn't it past your bedtime?"
Oh, it's so condescending.
It is super condescending. I'm going, "Excuse me? Are you trying to tell me when I'm supposed to go to bed? You're awake, you stupid animal." It's one of those things. It's like every time they say that to me, I'm like, but then I still keep playing. So it's definitely a guilty pleasure in that thing, because Animal Crossing is wildly successful, I would say. It's had many iterations. It's got a big fan base. They have people that cosplay as them, so that usually bodes pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Well, it may not be 10-year-old Brendo, but maybe, wouldn't be far off it. Maybe 12. I was playing a little game on my ancient PC. You see, you will have noticed it from my stories of Brendo past that I was always behind the times when it came to video game consoles.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot of cash flow going through our house. Our PC was not the most modern piece of equipment in the house, let's put it that way. So a lot of the PC games that I played were probably well past their playtime. Now, I got a massive collection of Star Wars games when I was madly in love with Star Wars, roughly about 1996, 97. Included in that were some awesome, top-notch games that my computer could not run. So I was left with games like Star Wars Rebel Assault and Rebel Assault 2.
Oh, beautiful.
Which had about the resolution of maybe 200 pixels either way. Live action
Yes.
cutscenes. Let's not forget those little gems.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've got video games these days. You've got Mads Mikkelsen in them. You've got Willem Dafoe. Who can we get for our game at the moment? Oh, let's get this guy. He's exciting. Let's get Norman Reedus to be our strange Death Stranding man. No. These are not good actors at all.
They're not even the same voices, like for Darth Vader.
The actors themselves aren't good. The costumes look more like something you've made for a Star Wars convention
Or,
yourself.
or you hire from like a costume shop for like New Year's parties.
The special effects are atrocious. And then you get to the gameplay, which is basically just an on-rails shooter, but you use a joystick and you move the cursor, and if you hit the TIE fighters or you steer your speeder bike correctly, congratulations, you'll make it to the next level. And overall, the game lasts about 40 minutes if you actually run the whole gamut. And it rated terribly, but again, it will always have a special place in my heart. I played that game, as an estimation, 40 times.
That's a fair bit.
I loved it. That's the definition of a guilty pleasure right there.
But at least, games back then were a lot shorter. Like, it's rare to say about a lot of games these days that you've played them 40 times, unless you're me and you just can't stop playing Dragon Age or Mass Effect.
You know what's really dangerous, though, before we move on? GoodOldGames.com have Rebel Assault 2. I could get it for my PC for chump change. I'm tempted. I just go through cycles in life.
Yeah. You don't need it, honey.
But I want it. You were saying...
So, one game that feels a little hypocritical to be on this list, but I felt I needed to put it on here for me, is Mass Effect Andromeda. And we have complained a lot about this game since episode 1, because Mass Effect, I think, is very precious, especially to me. And so I think more than anything, I think I was just upset that they had kind of butchered the good name of Mass Effect.
Yeah.
So Andromeda is definitely considered a huge flop. You look at brand new copies selling for like $10, and like, that's only not even a year after it released. That's a pretty bad sign.
Absolutely. Again, it's a case of a series that hit high note, high note, high note.
Sharp fall.
Sharp
Absolutely.
fall.
And, obviously there's a lot of good reasoning, or not necessarily good reasoning, but at least we know why it sucked so bad and why there were so many issues with the terrible bugs in the animation and the dead eyes and the brokenness, the world loading. Like, every time you traveled to a new planet, people had to sit and watch it slowly transition from one planet to another, which looked cool at first, but once you've been playing the game for a few hours, that gets really irritating.
This is another game that had the potential to be so much better than it was.
Yeah.
You had issues with the game engine itself, that they didn't want to use this engine. You had the development team getting sliced in half.
Yeah.
You had the time restriction too darn tight to make a game. I will never complain if a game gets delayed. If they're polishing bugs, working out the kinks,
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm happy for that, because I would rather a game be everything it can possibly be,
Yeah.
as opposed to being Mass Effect Andromeda.
And to be fair, I mean, they did eventually fix a lot of the animation bugs and things that people addressed in the months following its release. But it's just such a shame in today's age that they kind of rely on that as their fallback, their safety net, as opposed to just making sure that it's ready to go upon release,
Yeah.
Too many developers, I think, are using that as a crutch to say, we can release patches when it comes out, or, a week after or a month after, and it's okay. But I think, unfortunately, with Mass Effect Andromeda, they destroyed so many fans with it was just so broken that a lot of people just refused to, they put it down and didn't even finish the game, which is a real shame, because it isn't actually a bad game. And I think had it not had the name Mass Effect attached to it, and maybe been set with slightly different lore, but still the same kind of story, but maybe as a new IP, could have actually been received really well.
As long as those darn dungeons weren't in it. Easily the worst part of that game, and there's so many of them. It is atrocious. If a new Mass Effect game was announced to be coming out in 6 months now, where would your excitement level be?
I would be tentatively excited. I think part of me was scared that this game had killed the series.
Mhm.
And thankfully they've confirmed that it hasn't, that there will be a future one. But I'm still
Just like Silent Hill, you'll be disappointed yet again, everyone. We're making another one.
I know, I'm going to be used and abused.
Although, having said that, I really do wish they would make another Silent Hill game because Konami are just sitting on that IP.
Konami is sitting on everything, and
Let's just say Metal Gear Survive, not on my guilty pleasure list because I'm never going to play that game because it is the definition of hot garbage.
yes. Ugh. Ugh. All right, your last one, mister. Now, this kind of, I believe, falls in both categories of guilty pleasure and flops.
Oh, it's in every category under the sun, just about. No surprise, I wanted to give the big finish here. The Sonic the Hedgehog franchise is pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
If you had the entire scope of Sonic games laid out in a row and they were scaled based off how good they were, you might have half a dozen that are above the good line into great territory. But I reckon over 50% of them would be beneath the average line into the bad territory.
So many of them kind of hit that stupidly low score, like not even just it's all right. There they go, this is terrible. And unfortunately, they do that quite consistently.
Now, Sonic Mania Plus has come out recently. It is the highest average reviewed score Sonic game in like 25 years or something.
Woohoo!
Yay! That's good news.
Yep.
There was even a term made for the disappointment and hopefulness and then disappointment and then hopefulness that the fans would feel, called the Sonic Cycle, where everyone is depressed because the last game was garbage. A new trailer comes out for the next Sonic game and everyone's like, oh, this one looks like it'll be good. And then the build comes to the release and everyone's like, yes, I'm going to play this, it's going to be amazing. And then we play and we're like, oh my gosh, it's worse than the last one. And then you go back to the first point where you're like, oh, we're all depressed. Oh, look, hey, there's a new Sonic game coming out. It looks good.
That means that whoever's making the trailers is doing a really good job.
But there are some stinkers in that series, especially once we hit like the storybook games. There's
The ones
Sonic
where he
and the
plays like a
Secret
werewolf?
Rings. You've got Sonic and the Black Knight. Have you ever wanted Sonic the Hedgehog and the Legend of King Arthur to combine? Because boy, have I got the game for you. You've had Shadow the Hedgehog, who had a game where he could drive cars and shoot guns, because that's too edgy for Sonic himself. So we'll have Shadow do it because he's edgy. He's an edgehog. Yes, like you said, we had Sonic turn into a werewolf. We have had Super Mario Galaxy lookalikes. We have had Sonic Boom, the rise of lyrics. Speaking about bad game engines that weren't designed for that, speaking of cut development cycles and teams, there's a game that on GameRankings.com is the 11th worst game ever reviewed.
And yet the animation based off of that doesn't actually suck.
I love that animation.
It's pretty funny, and Travis Willingham in that is just hilarious.
Now, why the Sonic series is so much of a guilty pleasure of mine is because I love to collect all things Sonic. So I have purchased games that I know are absolutely terrible and that if I ever play them, I will be miserable. But I couldn't pass up Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric for $19. Are you kidding me? You're not going to see it for that price again. Please say something.
So thanks for joining us in the Gaming Lovers podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Guilty Pleasures and Flops We Love.
Sonic Adventure, the definition of a flop that I love. I played through that very recently. In fact, while we're talking about flops that we love, the Sega Dreamcast is among my favourite video game consoles, and that thing did terribly. Dynamite Cop, Blue Stinger, Jet Set Radio.
Yep.
There was an Echo the Dolphin game that was awesome. Soul Calibur, Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Adventure 2
Oh, tell us
was
more.
pretty good. I could. Let me go on. Sonic Shuffle. That's a Mario Party style game, but it's terrible. So don't pay attention to that. Shenmue came out on the Sega Dreamcast first, and Shenmue 2. Very rare.
It would be
to get a
faster to
copy
list
of.
the ones that didn't suck. Seriously.
All right, let's get out of this gaming funk that we're in. I feel dirty just talking about these games, let alone admitting that we love them. But that's the sign of true love. Love despite their flaws.
Absolutely. And I think giving them a second chance or a third or a 100th in some cases.
Jem, if I can love Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, I can love you forever.
You're in so much trouble, mister. All right, before I punch you,
Help.
your gaming goals this week.
Well, I would actually like to play more than Dark Souls. I would like to continue my Yakuza 5, but Dark Souls has me in its grasp.
In its bony fingers.
In its undead grasp. It'll be one of those two games. I have been working on something else at work, portable-wise, but I'm sort of keeping that under wraps.
Oh, really?
Maybe next week I'll give an update on that one.
Intrigue. Okay. Well, I'm going to continue playing Persona 5 and Period Cube. So my updates are somewhat boring at the moment.
Maybe you should play Dark Souls.
No. No, thank you.
No?
We've covered this many times. I like
Okay.
to play games to enjoy them, not to be punished for playing games. So, on that note, thank you so much for joining us in the Gaming Lovers Podcast episode number 15.
I like suffering.
Okay, weirdo. I think it's enough for us for one day. Have a wonderful week, and we'll catch you next time. Sayonara.
Let us know what your worst game is that you love. I would like to know that I'm not the only one who likes games that are terrible.
Let us know on our social media pages, Facebook or Twitter, or on our website, thegaminglovers.com. You can leave us a message there and let us know what flops or guilty pleasures you have in gaming. It's been real. It's been good. But it ain't been real good.
Not with these games, that's for certain. Chowski.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.